With the success of the television show Game of Thrones, George R.R. Martin catapulted into a level of success few authors ever experience.
Everyone and their hound knows his name, and even if you've never read a book in your life, you've heard of the world he's created.
And I think that's very well deserved, because for me personally, A Song of Ice and Fire is my favorite ever book series. And the fourth book, A Feast for Crows, is definitely a contender for my favorite book of all time.
So with George being such an iconic author, that left us with a thought.
Why does no one talk about everything else he's written?
So to remedy that, today we're going to talk about his first novel, Dying of the Light. I'm Eric.
And I'm Alex.
And this is In Other Works.
The first thing you'll notice when you open the book is a dedication which reads, "For Rachel, who loved me once."
And yeah, that's a bit odd because George was married to someone not named Rachel at the time he wrote the book.
Who Rachel is? No idea. Our research cannot find that. It does, however, fit very thematically with the book, because the book is about two people who loved each other once reuniting. It's all very awkward. It's very much a who loved me once.
Yeah, it's definitely a theme of the book.
Much like the A Song of Ice and Fire books, Dying of the Light opens with a prologue. However, unlike the prologues we're used to where we're into someone's POV, we're more into this third-person omniscient world building that sets up the planet.
The book's set on a rogue planet that's on a 50-year journey through a solar system for that period of which it's habitable. And the surrounding outer worlds have decided to turn it into a festival planet by building cities that celebrate both their culture and the period that that planet is going to be alive. And when we end up on Warlord, it's near the end of that period where it's still habitable, and the festival is long over, and there's only a few people still on the planet.
And it's slowly becoming uninhabitable, hence the name Dying of the Light. But the unfortunate thing is, this is such a really cool world that George R.R. Martin set up. The plot has nothing to do with that.
Yeah, but I will say that it does relate to the themes of the book.
What sort of themes?
So I'm going to have to sort of take a quick poetry diversion to explain that. Dying of the Light, the title comes from a Dylan Thomas poem, Do Not Go Gentle Into That Good Night, which is a poem that repeats both the title and the lines, rage, rage against the dying of the light, which is basically the whole point of the poem is that you need to fight death and fight to stay alive as long as you possibly can. So Thomas wrote it for his father, who was sick and would eventually die from his illness. But I think the themes of the book actually contradict the themes of the poem, where the book is about learning when to accept death, or at least the possibility of facing death. And it's a limited third-person narration. But unlike the Song of Ice and Fire books, we don't switch from character to character. The whole book is seen from the point of view of Dirk. The main character, Dirk Talarian, he receives a whisper jewel.
And tell me what a whisper jewel is, because when I read it, I did not understand what a whisper jewel was really.
I mean, it's almost completely irrelevant to the plot. A whisper jewel is a crystal that can capture emotions, and when you give it to someone who is connected to those emotions, they can feel them.
Yeah, I guess it doesn't really matter, because the whole point of it is that Dirk and his ex, Gwen, sent each other whisper jewels to say that if you send this to me, I'll show up, be there for you, no questions asked.
Right. And so the story starts with Dirk receiving a whisper jewel from Gwen and him deciding that he is going to find her and help her with whatever she needs. It's a bit ironic because we also find out that earlier he had sent his whisper jewel to Gwen like years earlier, and she never responded to that. She never came.
Because of that, Dirk is debating whether or not he should go or not. But the past 7 years, he's been living a very driftless life without her. And so if he can re-spark things, reignite things between them, that's what he's hoping for.
But the whole problem is that every single challenge in the story, everything that goes wrong, starts because he goes to find her. And if he hadn't gone, none of the issues that come through it happen in the book would have happened. So that's about my theme of not accepting death. He didn't accept the death of his relationship, and because of that, he causes a lot of other problems.
Let's talk a little bit about Dirk, because Dirk, you see, he kind kind of sucks.
I mean, sort of intentionally.
Oh, definitely intentionally.
He's pretty self-centered. We find out pretty early on that in his relationship with Gwen, he developed a nickname for her. He called her Jenny.
Which, who the hell does that? Who just calls their partner another name? Just why? That doesn't seem like a.
and Jenny or Gwen didn't like being called Jenny. Felt that she was becoming the Jenny that he had in his mind instead of who she actually was, and it's why she ended the relationship.
The only real problem with that, though, is we don't really get a sense when reading the book of what the difference is. And I think that's a lot of the problems with the book. We get all of this information about their relationship, that they loved each other so much and all of that, but we don't actually get any sense what it was like.
Yeah, it's almost like the book was a sequel to another novel that we can't read and never will be able to read because it isn't.
Which, speaking of that, though, the Dying of the Light is set in a sort of extended universe that George has been writing called Thousand Worlds, and he's written many short stories in them. I believe this is the only full novel that's set in this world, but a lot of his short stories, like, for example, one I've read called The Hero, which I think is the first thing he has ever published, it's set like 3,000 years before the story. Doesn't really have much to do with it, but...
Yeah, and I haven't read any of them yet, so I can't really comment on it, but you thought it was a good story?
The ending is really good, which is funny because I know a lot of people say George R.R. Martin can't write endings, but easily the best part of it. But yeah, like when I say there's nothing in common, I mean the only thing is that, you know how Dying of the Light mentions this like other species of aliens called Harangans, but they don't affect the story at all?
Yeah.
So this book, the short story, is set with like a war between the humans and Harangans like thousands of years before Dying of the Light.
Oh, okay. Oh,
And,
that's cool.
Yeah. It kind of feels though when reading Dying of the Light, now that I've read this short story, that the Harangans are only mentioned to be a connective tissue to connect the worlds because there's not anything else in common.
Oh, okay. One of the things I wasn't sure about with the book is the characterization of Gwen. She seems pretty one-note, two-dimensional character, and I was wondering if that's a fault of George R.R. Martin's writing, or if it's more about the character of the fact that we're seeing it from Dirk's point of view, who just has this idealized view of her and never really knew who she was as a person.
Well, I don't think it's because of any reason that's like misogynistic or anything, because I personally found every single character to be a bit underdeveloped in the book, even though there's other characters I like Janicek. It's more so that his culture, the Cavalar culture, is very well developed.
It's probably the best developed thing in the book.
Oh, absolutely.
High Cavalan and their culture, yeah.
Yep. So I don't think that's like an issue integral to just Gwen. It is an issue with the whole book.
Okay, that's fair. Should probably say that we sound pretty critical of the book.
That's because we are. There's a lot to criticize in this book. But
considering it's a first novel, I think we can forgive it. I think
there's so much stuff that's just really gets us thinking when we read the book. It's just because there's a lot of weaknesses to it doesn't mean there aren't also a lot of strengths, and they balance each other out very much.
I think so.
I guess let's talk then about what happens once Dirk arrives. So,
oh, sure, yeah.
So he arrives, he meets with Gwen, who's with a Kimdisi known as Arkin Ruark.
Kimdisi is a world, it's another planet, another culture that does not get along with the Cavalar culture. They've had conflict between them, well, sort of conflict, because the Kimdisis are actually pacifists, but it's more complicated than that. So when we first hear about the Cavalan culture and Gwen's husband, who is a Cavalan, we're getting it from the point of view of Kimdisi, who is prejudiced and biased against them.
Yeah. So he informs Dirk that Gwen has been married. Well, married's not the right term, but we'll get into that later.
So yeah, she's married to a character we just kind of know as Jan, but his full name is Jantony High Iron Jade Vickery. Which
I'm sure when you read A Song of Ice and Fire, you get the names of a lot of characters confused. Even in just this small cast of characters in the book, we get a character that's commonly referred to as Jan, and we get another referred to as Janicek. Yeah, but I don't think that's too confusing. But one thing that's important to say is that names are actually important to the Cavalar culture. Which is probably a huge reason why Gwen, during that conversation, is reflecting on the stuff with Jenny, because
she's involved in a culture that talks about how the name you have sort of creates who you are. And also, we get another example of Dirk not respecting names.
Yeah, because the thing about the names of the Cavalar culture is that the people's last name, so Vickery, for example, with Jan, and, Garce Janicek with him, those are their chosen names. And in the way Cavalar culture works, your chosen name is your least important name. It is the name, if you were to just refer to someone as just their last name, that is very disrespectful. But because of the culture Dirk grew up in, it's like just fine to call someone that. It's like like something you'd call an acquaintance or whatever by just their last name.
And even though it's explained to Dirk how disrespectful he's being, he continues to call Garce Janicek throughout the whole book.
Yeah, which leaves us often referring to him as Janicek.
Yeah, and it also it's another indication that Dirk, throughout most of the book, is not that willing to change, even for the sake of other people. One of the things that happens is Dirk apparently is remorseful and regrets calling her Jenny now that he knows how much it bothered her. But throughout the book, he still thinks of her. He may not directly call her. He does. Actually, you're right. He does directly call her Jenny once or twice more, but he constantly thinks of her as Jenny, even though he says he regrets it.
Yeah, no, it's very, every time I read the name Jenny after that conversation, which that conversation, by the way, is like once I read that conversation, that's when I got hooked into the book. And every time I read the name Jenny past that point, part of me wanted to shoot myself. But anyways, when we said, though, that that Gwen is married to Jan, it's not quite accurate. What he is what she is to Jan is known as a Bethane.
We find out that on High Cavalan, which is the planet the Cavalars come from,
there was a plague that wiped out 90% of the male population and 99% of the female population.
And this is during a period when that planet was separated from the rest of humanity, and it reverted into a more primitive state. So then the culture built up as a very male-dominant culture, where the women were less important, and even in their relationships with other men were more important than their relationships with women. And that's where we get the term Tane.
Which is like, it's not quite a best friend, but it's like someone who you're like honor-bound duty to, and it's like you have this like inseparable connection for life. You'll fight in each other's duels, you'll sleep with each other probably.
Well, we don't know that for sure.
But it doesn't kind of...
It implies some homosexual behavior, but it doesn't come out and say it.
Yeah. Do you think they sleep with each other?
I don't know if Jan and Garce did. I think Garce would have wanted to. I'm not sure Jan did. But I'm sure that there are other Tanes who have.
Do you think George was purposely put in that implication?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I don't think that's an accident. So then the other relationship is a Bethane, which is a relationship that a man would have with a woman. It's similar to, it's probably more similar to a wife in more primitive cultures where they're not on equal footing, and the woman is sort of actually property of the man. And
Tanes share Bethane.
Yes. So because Gwen became
Jan's
Bethane, she was obliged to also sleep with Garce. They actually have a very tense relationship, Garce and Gwen.
Well, understandable, you know. Yeah. You're dating this one guy. You don't want to suddenly be sleeping with this other dude.
But the weird thing is that it's explained that they had a good relationship. And then after they finally slept together is when Garce just started treating her terribly. And their relationship became one of constant fighting and bickering.
Yeah. Garce kind of sucks, but he's also by far my favorite character in the book.
The ways he sucks are the ways that he is connected to the Cavalar traditions of the Cavalar culture.
Yeah, he's a very traditional, like more conservative kind of guy than Jan. And because of this, he leads to a lot of the peak parts of the novel where he's having these philosophical debates with Dirk, and he explains to Dirk how like his cultural thoughts on it are wrong and what things like really mean. We get this very interesting perspective on matters through him. The reason why the Cavalar are on Warlord is because they believe that there's a creature called Mockmen that exist on this planet. And Mockmen are predators which take the form of like real people and hunt humans. And so what they do is they hunt the Mockmen. It is like part of the Cavalar tradition to hunt these Mockmen. However, a lot of them seem to know that Mockmen aren't a real thing and are just saying this for the sake of hunting humans, and will often just take any human that's from another planet, declare them as Mockmen, and hunt them.
Right. And that's actually the whole reason that Jan is on Warlord. He is opposed to this part of his culture. The hunting of Mockmen has actually been banned on High Cavalan. So the reason Cavalars have come to Warlord is so that they continue to hunt Mockmen on Warlord. And Jan has showed up so that he can protect the people that are left on Warlord and prevent them from being hunted. He basically makes the people left on Warlord, he tries to declare them as his property so that they come under his protection and therefore cannot be hunted.
Before we meet Jan, everything we hear about him from Ruark is him essentially bad-mouthing him. But when we actually meet Jan, he seems to be this actually pretty chill guy. Most of his problems, of course, are baked into the fact that there's like a lot of toxicity in the Cavalar culture. Even if like we get it from a racist perspective, there is still, like, looking at things objectively, toxic elements to it. But he wants to change a lot of those elements. He does not approve of the way women are looked down upon, obviously with the Mockmen. And when he says declaring him as property, it's only because that's like sort of the term that's used. He doesn't like actually see them as property.
Yeah, it's a move he's making to save them. It's actually one of the first problems that arises in the book, because Dirk is offended about the idea of being made property and refuses to accept that. So he is therefore at risk of being hunted by all the other Cavalars on the world because of his pride.
But Gwen seems to support that.
She respects his right to make that choice, but I don't know if she actually thinks it's a good idea.
I don't think Gwen assumes that Dirk is just going to leave the way he does.
Yeah. So Dirk is challenged to a duel, and because he's no longer protected by Jan, he kind of has to accept.
Because they just kill him.
Yeah, they'll just kill him as a Malkman if he doesn't.
Duels are really interesting. So the way it works is there are sort of 4 rules to any given duel. And the one who's challenged gets first choice of which rule they want to set it to. The options are numbers, which means either it's a solo duel or one and their Tain both partake in the duel. Mode, which basically means whether it's to the death or not. Weapons, guns or swords. It's more blaster, right?
Yeah.
And what was location? Was the last
Location,
one.
yeah.
Location, yeah.
So the person who's challenged gets the first choice of any of those 4 options. Then the challenger picks from the remaining 3. Then the challenged picks one more, and then the challenged, well, I guess they don't get a choice. They get to choose from the last option.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
They did get a choice.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So you think the best part of the book is Cavalar culture and how that's developed, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very good. It feels like a real culture. It's like it's really well developed, and the only thing is, as mentioned, just because the culture is so well developed, and it makes Jan and Garce feel like much more interesting characters. They're actually underdeveloped beneath the surface. It's just that they have ideas in a very well developed culture that entirely carries their characters. For that reason, I don't think I can quite say it's the best part of the book. For me, though, what this book does so well is how it builds tension. This book gets really tense. Like, once the story actually starts, which takes like a few chapters, I will say, I didn't like it at first. Like, during those first few chapters, I had a lot of issues with it. I felt the dialogue was very clunky. It was because a lot of the dialogue, it's basically just people having monologues that are info dumps to each other. And it's very awkward to read, I found.
Yeah, so one of the things is I didn't actually read the book. I listened to the audiobook, and it's narrated by Ian Glenn.
Yeah, that's the actor for Jorah Mormont. And yeah, I eventually had to switch to it too. And it's just so much cleaner.
Yeah, he really brings the words to life. He's a great actor, and he really does a good job with the narration. So if you have an opportunity to listen to the audiobook, highly recommend it.
But once the story actually starts, whoa, heart palpitations.
Yeah. Despite Dirk not being
likable at all,
you still invest in him, and you want him to survive. You don't necessarily want him to, you definitely don't want him to reconnect with Gwen, but you want him to survive and learn a lesson.
So yeah, what do you think of the epilogue?
It kind of felt more like a last chapter than an epilogue. Like, I feel like usually an epilogue is a little bit distant from the rest of the story, and this just felt like the immediate next chapter. But I liked the way the book ended. I was pretty happy with it. On first read, I was a little disappointed. It felt like Dirk was learning his lesson at absolutely the wrong time, and but I think there's more to it than that I didn't notice at first.
So in the end, while there's a lot to criticize about this book, I think it's still a very thought-provoking book, and there's a lot of amazing elements to it. And in the end, I think I still quite liked it.
Yeah. So on a scale of ice and fire, what do you think you'd rate it?
I think I'd probably rate it a microwave pizza.
Okay. I think I'd probably go with that first sip of tea that burns the tip of your tongue.
Yeah, I got the sense you liked it better than me.
Thanks for watching, and be sure to tune in next week when we do a spoilery discussion of the book.
So be sure to read it.
And while you're here, like, subscribe, and do all those things other YouTubers tell you to do.
Thanks for watching. You already said that, but thanks for watching again.